Why was the mission briefing so quiet? Too quiet, like even the walls were listening. The fluorescent lights hummed above, cold and merciless, cutting harsh lines across Lieutenant Commander Jake's face as he leaned over a spread of satellite photos. His men shifted uneasily around the steel table, each glance betraying what no one wanted to say aloud. Something about this operation smelled wrong. Had been doing this long enough to trust his instincts, and right now, those instincts screamed trap. But still, he spoke with the calm authority of a man who couldn't afford to let doubt fracture the room. "We have a priority extraction," he began, his voice steady. The team responded in subtle ways, looked up from cleaning the bolt of his rifle, carefully zipped a medic pouch. Davis pretended not to listen as he tuned radio frequencies, while Torres and Williams traded knowing glances. On paper, it was simple, almost too simple. A CIA asset, codenamed Nightingale, was holed up in a compound just north of the Pakistani border. Supposedly, he carried intelligence on a chemical weapons deal that could kill thousands if left unchecked. A nightmare scenario if true. But finally broke the silence everyone else had been holding. "Sir," he asked quietly, his hands pausing mid-motion, "since when does the agency give us a gift-wrapped mission like this? Drop zones clear, minimal resistance, heavy for one guy, doesn't add up." He was right, it didn't. His jaw tightened, and when he laid a classified photograph flat on the table, the air shifted. The face that stared back at them wasn't some faceless informant. It was Tommy, once their teammate, once closest friend, officially declared dead 2 years ago during Operation Broken Arrow. The silence was deafening. Williams whispered, his voice breaking into disbelief. Nodded grimly. The photo was fresh, alive, beaten perhaps, but alive. But that wasn't the part that gnawed at. It was the note scrawled at the bottom of the agency's file, assets specifically requested. Why, after 2 years of silence, would Tommy surface now? Why pull of all people into the fire again? The helicopter's rotors thundered minutes later, drowning thought with sheer noise, but still heard his own doubts echoing beneath the roar. His rifle felt heavier than usual. His chest. Because deep down, he couldn't shake the fear that this wasn't a rescue. This was a reckoning. They touched down hard, boots crunching against barren mountain stone, disappearing into the night sky like it wanted no part of what came next. The air was sharp, every breath dragging cold into their lungs. Led the way, his night vision goggles painting the rocky terrain in unnatural shades of green. His men followed in silent synchronization, shadows moving among shadows, honed by years of training. But silence carried weight too. His voice finally broke it, crackling low in his earpiece. "Sir, if's alive after all this time, what if he was turned?" The thought cut deeper than wanted to admit. Had been their comms specialist, their code breaker, their eyes and ears. If he'd been broken, the secrets inside him could dismantle more than this mission. They could unravel everything. Remembered the last night he'd seen him alive. Broken Arrow. The botched mission that still haunted his dreams. Arguing to push forward, ordering a retreat's last words over the radio. "Someone has to do the right thing, Jake." Then the explosion. Then the silence. For 2 years had carried the weight of that decision like a stone in his chest. Now maybe he'd learn whether had lived with it or sold it. The compound came into view, nestled in the valley below. Froze, scanning with narrowed eyes, too many firing lanes. Sandbags placed just right. Windows reinforced. No guards posted like intelligence had promised. Everything about it screamed setup. His whisper confirmed what already felt in his bones. Counting way more heat signatures than briefed. "Sir, this is bad." But they weren't the only ones watching. High on the ridge, hidden beneath brush and stone, a single pair of eyes tracked them. Lay silent, her suit blending her into the landscape. She hadn't moved in hours, hadn't spoken in days. Through the precision glass of her scope, she watched his team advance, each careful step of theirs mirrored by a pulse of memory in her mind. She knew that gait, confident, cautious, carrying the weight of ghosts. 3 years since she'd seen him. 3 years since the day her brother had gone down in a flaming helicopter during one of his missions. She had been listening to the radio when it happened. Her brother's last words had seared into her chest. Mayday, mayday, taking heavy fire. Engine failure, going down hard. By the time the wreckage was found, there was nothing left. The after-action reports had been vague, too vague, but she had dug deeper, and she had learned the truth, or what she thought was truth then. That decisions had created the chain of failure that killed. Since that day, she had carried rage colder than the steel in her rifle. And now here he was, walking into a valley that she already knew was crawling with insurgents. She had counted 30 fighters, maybe more, an ambush disguised as a mission. The SEALs were walking straight into a slaughterhouse. Her orders from her contractor handler were clear: pull out in 6 hours, leave the valley, live to fight another day. But she stayed, eyes on, heart split between vengeance and duty. What would have wanted her to do? The breach came at 2:47 hours. A blast of shaped charges tearing through reinforced doors, the SEALs flooding into the compound like liquid shadow. For a heartbeat, silence held. Then saw him. Slumped in a chair, head bowed at an angle that no living man's head should hang. His breath caught. His gut already knew before his hands confirmed, was dead, long dead, tortured, used, and in his hand a note. Jake, they made me call you here. The intel was fake. This was always about you. Get out now. T. The words were ice water down spine. His worst suspicion confirmed. This wasn't a mission. It was a setup. And outside, the valley awoke with gunfire. Dozens of muzzle flashes lit the night as insurgents poured fire down from the surrounding ridges. Machine guns opened up, RPGs screamed, mortar shells cracked against stone. The compound turned into a tomb, every wall shaking, dust choking the air. Men fought like cornered wolves, firing disciplined bursts, but already Williams was down, bleeding badly, his hands working desperately to stem the arterial flow. His voice cut through the chaos, low and commanding even as bullets tore the world apart. This is Phoenix 6. We are in contact. Heavy fire. Request immediate extraction. Static answered. Nothing. They were alone. From her hide heard it. His voice. His controlled desperation carried across the frequency, identical to the voice she'd heard 2 years ago in her brother's final moments. Her finger brushed the trigger guard. Every instinct screamed to stay hidden, stay alive, let pay the price he owed. But she looked again through her scope, saw Williams slipping away on the medic's lap, saw pinned down, nearly flanked by enemy fire, saw the familiar weariness in his eyes as he realized with absolute clarity that this was where they'd all die. Something shifted inside her. Rage wasn't enough anymore. Revenge was voice. Duty was. Her radio crackled to life, her decision made. Phoenix 6, she said, her voice steady as the mountain itself. This is Reaper. I have eyes on your position. Stand by for support. A long silence followed, then's voice sharp intake of breath betraying the recognition. Reaper, confirm call sign. His finger tightened. She didn't answer his question. Instead, her rifle did. 1 shot, 1 kill. The heavy machine gun pinning went silent as its gunner collapsed in a spray of blood. Confirmed kill on South Ridge machine gun, she transmitted coldly. You have a window, move now. For the first time that night, the battle shifted. But's voice returned quieter this time, and froze. Reaper, he said softly, that was call sign. Her hand shook on the bolt. She had a choice, stay silent or tell him the truth. Through the static, her voice finally broke. Was my brother. He died trying to extract you from Broken Arrow. Tonight, I finish what he started. His reply came low, almost like a confession. Jesus Christ, you're. And in that moment, as the battle raged around them, as the echoes of gunfire turned the valley into a graveyard, Two ghosts finally collided in the same storm. What did it mean when the past called your name in the middle of gunfire? Scope still tracked the valley, each breath measured, each heartbeat slower than time itself. She had given team one window, one breath of relief, but she knew it wouldn't last. Her finger rested on the trigger again, but her mind was elsewhere. Revenge, duty. Each name felt like a weight pressing her deeper into the earth she lay upon. Phoenix 6, you have 3 more moving east slope. I'm tracking them now. Her voice stayed steady, professional, but her chest ached with every word. Reply came quick. Copy Reaper, mark and engage. The words rolled back the years, dragging her into the barracks, the training yards, the endless voice of instructors drilling her on one principle that was supposed to be iron: trust the team. But wasn't her team? Not anymore. He was the ghost tied to her brother's death. Her crosshairs found a fighter climbing through the rocks, an RPG slung across his back. One squeeze and he crumpled into silence. But then something else. The mountain itself seemed to whisper a warning. A snap of rock, a whine past her ear, a spray of stone cutting her cheek. The crack of a high-powered rifle. Rolled instinctively, sliding down her hide, heart slamming against her ribs. Another shot, precise, cutting the air exactly where she would have been. Whoever fired wasn't guessing. They were reading her like a book. She spat blood from her lip and muttered through her mic, "Sniper, I'm being hunted." His voice was urgent. "Reaper confirm, sniper in your sector." But she was already moving, crawling deeper into the rocks, every muscle remembering old instincts. This wasn't just some insurgent with a stolen. This was someone trained, someone who knew her. The third shot cracked, closer this time, forcing her against a ridge wall. Splinters of rock stung her face, drawing fresh blood. She stayed still, letting silence cloak her, waiting. And then her satellite phone buzzed. She almost didn't answer, but the number unknown. The voice, when it came through, turned her veins to ice. The man drawled, his tone mocking familiarity. "I wondered when you'd show up to the party." Her throat tightened. Jackson Reeves. The name was poison. Once, he had been a fellow warrior, an army ranger with a reputation for being unstoppable, until greed swallowed him whole, until he started selling weapons to the same people they fought against, until she stood in a courtroom and against him. He had sworn she'd regret it. She had almost believed he'd died when he vanished overseas. But no, he was here, and now he had her pinned. "Still working for the highest bidder, Jackson," she whispered, scanning the ridges through her scope. Nothing. He was too smart to stay in one place after a muzzle flash. "Business is good," Reeves chuckled. "Especially when old friends drop by uninvited. You know, when my employers told me they had a trap for team, I never imagined I'd get a chance to settle our score too. But here we are. Beautiful, isn't it?" Another shot cracked, forcing her deeper into cover. He wasn't just shooting to kill. He was shooting to toy with her, to herd her. His voice came through the comms again. "We're pinned at the north wall, if you can." "Phoenix 6, she cut him off. "Hostile snipers. Reeves, former ranger, he knows me, knows my tactics. I'll keep him busy. Move your team." Her voice betrayed nothing. Inside, though, her hands shook. Reeves was no ordinary threat. He was her mirror, and he wanted her broken before he killed her. Reeves's laughter came again over her phone. "You know what your problem always was. You think too much. Always hesitating, always calculating. Sometimes you just pull the trigger." She knew what he was referring to. Helmand Province. The boy, 10 years old, holding the hand of a man who really had been a bomb maker. Reeves had fired through the child, killed them both. She had refused, and she had carried the image of that boy in her nightmares ever since. "I remember Helmand," she whispered back, her eyes scanning, her fingers steady despite the ache in her chest. "And I remember you freezing," Reeves sneered. "I did what had to be done. You walked away weak. You think sentiment wins wars. No, sentiment gets you killed. Through her scope, a glint of starlight betrayed movement. 600 meters northwest ridge, she fired. The bullet sparked harmlessly against stone, empty air. He was gone, already moving again. Her phone buzzed with a text. 2 words, check 6. She spun instinctively just as a round tore past her shoulder. He had circled. He was inside 400 meters now, closing. His voice carried back through her earpiece. Reaper status. She bit down on the panic clawing at her throat. Engaged. Reeves is close. Move your men north, don't wait for me. Negative, growled. We don't leave people behind. Her chest tightened. Words she had heard before. Words her brother had lived by, died by. Some promises are harder to keep than others, she whispered back, cutting her comms. She couldn't let him split his attention. Couldn't let him risk more lives for hers. This was between her and Reeves now. The rocks shifted. Reeves was closing the trap, his voice echoing across the stone walls. Do you know what your brother's last words were? He called for you, called your name as his bird burned. Her heart lurched. She wanted to scream, to fire blind rage into the night, but she held steady, steady. You're lying, she hissed. Am I? His voice slithered closer, now maybe 300 meters out. Ask yourself this. If was really at fault, why wasn't he court-martialed? Why did he get promoted? Because someone needed a scapegoat, and your brother knew too much. Her stomach churned, the after-action reports, the silence at its funeral, haunted eyes, it had never fully added up. Reeves fired again. Stone exploded inches from her head. He was walking her down piece by piece. The people who killed are, Reeves taunted. They were the ones who paid for that mission, the same ones paying me tonight. Your brother died trying to stop them, and now they're using his sister to finish the job. His breath came ragged, each word like glass in her throat. Your saying was murdered. Sabotaged, Reeves corrected coldly. Explosive planted on his rotor. Remote detonation once he was in the air. Clean, silent, effective. You've been hunting the wrong man all this time, but hey, it kept you busy, kept you angry, useful. Her vision blurred, but not from the blood streaking her cheek. From the truth. 2 years of rage pointed at the wrong ghost. Hadn't killed. He had carried the guilt while the real killers cashed their profits. Her rifle wavered for the first time. And Reeves laughed. The firefight raged in the valley below. His men were running low, pinned harder every minute, but could barely hear it. Every breath, every beat was Reeves's voice in her ear. Come on, let's finish this. You and me, face to face. His boots crunched stone, closer now, 30 meters, 20. She rolled deeper into a ravine, rifle braced against jagged walls. The bottleneck ahead was narrow, a kill zone she could turn into her only chance. She pressed her cheek to the stock, pain screaming from her cuts, her mind screaming his name. You know what Wood called me, Reeves mocked, his silhouette finally sliding into view. He'd call me what I am, the truth, the man who showed you where loyalty gets you, dead. She didn't answer. Her finger curled, breath steadying one last time. Let him step into the light, let him think he had her. Because sister was not going to die running. She was going to fight. And Reeves was going to learn what her silence meant. What happens when the hunter becomes the hunted? Pressed her back against the jagged wall of the ravine, the night air cold against the blood drying on her cheek. Every muscle was taut, every nerve alive with the awareness that Jackson Reeves was close. Too close. His boots scraped loose stone, a predator circling in the dark. Her rifle was steady, braced against the rock, barrel aimed at the narrow choke point ahead. She had chosen her ground carefully. Here he'd have to show himself. Here skill and patience would mean more than brute force. But Reeves knew her too well. He'd trained beside her once, sparred with her, studied the way she thought. He knew patience was her weapon, and he'd try to use it against her. His voice came soft, dripping with mock familiarity, echoing against stone. I know you're down there. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You've always been predictable." She didn't answer. Predictability was death. Silence was survival. But silence didn't stop her mind from moving. His laugh on her graduation day, his voice in her headset the night his bird went down, his ghost in every mission since. Reeves's words slithered back into her thoughts. Sabotage. Remote detonation. Didn't die because of, he died because of them, because of me, because I. Her chest ached. For 2 years she had pointed her rage at Jake, made him the villain of her grief. But now she wasn't sure if she hated him, or wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with him against the real enemy. The only thing she knew for certain, Reeves was lying about some things but not all. He always mixed truth with poison. And truth or not, he was still closing in. Below in the valley, his world was unraveling. Rounds hammered the compound wall, stone chips biting his face as he crouched low, returning controlled bursts. Sniper fire cracked intermittently from what little cover he had left, each shot buying seconds of life for the team. Contact left, multiple RPGs. His voice cut sharp through the comms. "Copy," shouted, ducking as a rocket screamed overhead and detonated against the compound, collapsing part of the roof. Dust and smoke choked the air. Williams groaned, and his voice rose in frantic medical urgency. "Sir, he's crashing. Blood pressure's tanking. I can't hold him much longer." His jaw clenched. He pressed his radio again, forcing calm into desperation. "Phoenix 6 actual to any station monitoring. We are Americans under heavy fire. We need immediate extraction now." Static, only static. They were ghosts shouting into the void. And yet another voice was out there. Reaper. Whoever she truly was, she was fighting for them. Somewhere in those ridges, her rifle was speaking when no one else answered. But could tell from the rhythm of her fire, it had stopped. She was in trouble. He didn't have to guess why. Reeves's boots were closer now. 15 meters, 10. "You know what your brother's last words were," he called softly, almost tenderly. "He called for you, he thought you'd save him, but you weren't there." Her stomach clenched. She forced herself not to flinch, not to breathe too loud, not to let him hear the truth of what his words did to her. Reeves laughed quietly. "That's why I like you. You carry guilt like a badge of honor, but guilt doesn't stop bullets." His shadow appeared, broad shoulders, rifle angled low, sweeping the choke point. He was smart, using angles, not rushing, testing. Steadied her breathing. Her finger brushed the trigger. And then, like a whisper from her brother, she remembered's voice. "Don't rush the shot. Let the moment come to you." So she waited. The firefight below raged on. "Sir," Torres shouted over the deafening rattle of gunfire. "We can't hold much longer. They're closing in from every side." His rifle barked again, emptying the last rounds of a magazine before he slammed another home. His chest heaved. Sweat and grit streaked his face. The math was already against them. Too many enemies, too little ammo, one critically wounded man bleeding out. And then his voice broke, ragged and strained. "Down to my last mag, sir." Knew what that meant. The next minutes would decide everything. Life or death, survival or silence. Unless Reaper came back. Reeves stepped closer, into the mouth of the bottleneck. The moonlight caught his face now, and twisted, that familiar smirk still painted there. He leveled his rifle, barrel aimed straight into the shadows where waited. "Drop your weapon," he said evenly. "You're going to help me finish team, or I'll do it myself. Either way, you're dying tonight, but you can choose how." His heart thundered. Pain lanced through her shoulder from the earlier fragments. Her body begged her to break, but her soul, the part had raised in her, held steady. Her crosshairs sat on his chest. She could feel the weight of the trigger under her finger. And she thought suddenly of his voice minutes ago. "We don't leave anyone behind." She thought of saying the same thing, once upon a time. And she realized what she had to do. The crack of simultaneous rifles split the night. Reeves staggered, his bullet tearing through his vest. His shot struck her shoulder, the impact exploding fire through her body, slamming her back against the ravine wall. She gasped, vision blurring, blood soaking her tactical vest, but her rifle was still in her hands. Reeves grinned through the blood in his teeth, staggering but upright. One shot, you think that's enough? Her vision tunneled, her body screamed, but her will was steel. She chambered another round, raised the rifle with trembling strength, and fired. This time the bullet found his throat. Reeves's eyes went wide, shock replacing arrogance. He staggered, weapon slipping from his hands. Then he fell, choking, gurgling, collapsing into the dirt, silent at last. Slumped back, every breath agony. Her shoulder shattered, her strength bleeding out with the ground beneath her, but she had won. She keyed her radio, her voice a whisper of steel. Phoenix 6, hostile sniper neutralized. I'm wounded but operational. Get your people out, I'll cover you. His reply was immediate, fierce. Negative, Reaper, we're not leaving you behind. She smiled grimly through the haze of pain. Williams needs evacuation now. You know the math, get him out. I'll hold the line. The silence that followed was heavier than any gunfire. Knew she was right, but still his voice broke, raw and unyielding. Reaper, this isn't over. I'm coming back for you. His eyes burned, not from the blood, not from the pain, from the weight of words she never thought she'd hear from, not after everything. And as she shifted her rifle back into position, bracing herself against the agony, she whispered softly into the night, to herself, to anyone who might listen. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Then she pulled the trigger again, her bullet carving light through darkness, protecting men she once swore she hated, but now knew she could never abandon. How long could one person bleed before the will gave out? Didn't know the answer, she only knew she wasn't there yet. Her left shoulder was a storm of agony, shattered bone grinding with every movement. Blood seeped hot beneath her vest, dripping down her side, soaking the earth. Her good hand clutched the rifle, dragging it back into position. Every muscle begged her to collapse, to surrender, to let the night take her. But the valley below screamed with gunfire, and she knew surrender wasn't an option. Through blurred vision, her scope came into focus again. Muzzle flashes strobed the darkness, enemy fighters bounding closer, Pinning's team at the north wall. The SEALs were battered, exhausted, clinging to cover that wouldn't last much longer. And Williams had minutes left. Her breath came ragged, but her finger found the trigger. A fighter moving to flank Torres dropped with a single shot. Another climbing the ridge toward pitched backward, lifeless before he hit the rocks. Her rifle spoke even as her body failed. Phoenix 6, she whispered into the radio, her voice hoarse but clear. 2 tangos down, you have a gap to your 11 o'clock, push now. His reply carried that iron edge again, the weight of command bound with guilt. Copy, Reaper, moving. Below signaled his men forward. Half-carried, half-dragged Williams, the corpsman's face carved with desperation as he worked to keep the wounded man alive and moving. Torres and laid down fire, covering the advance, while Davis scrambled to keep comms alive, antenna angled desperately toward the sky as if begging the heavens themselves to hear. The air was thick with smoke and grit. Bullets snapped overhead, punched into stone, tore dust from the earth. Moved like a man possessed, firing short bursts, dragging his team step by step towards survival. And all the while, his rifle cracked from somewhere unseen, carving slivers of breathing room into an impossible battlefield. Every shot was a promise, you will not fall, not tonight. But the enemy wasn't done. Contact south, multiple fighters moving through the boulder field. His voice broke sharp over the comms. His eyes cut left. He saw them, shadows slinking between cover, closing fast on their route to the landing zone. 10 at least, maybe more. They moved with the precision of men who weren't just insurgents but trained killers. "Reaper, can you cover?" demanded. Scope found them, her finger tightened. She fired, one down, then another. But her hands trembled now, the blood loss stealing her steadiness. She adjusted, forced her body into discipline, took another shot. Another, miss again. Her breath came fast, her vision tunneling. She was slipping. "Reaper status," his voice carried sharp concern. She forced the words out. "Still operational but running dry. You'll have to push hard now." Didn't argue, he couldn't. Not with Williams fatting its arms. Tours lay smoke, "We're moving." White plumes hissed into the night, blooming across the valley floor. Under cover of the haze, the SEALs surged forward, dragging their wounded brother toward the promise of extraction. Blinked hard, fighting to stay conscious. Her scope blurred, doubled. She gritted her teeth, tasting iron, and forced her eye to focus again. The world narrowed to a tunnel, her rifle, her breath, the target. She dropped another fighter who had broken through the smoke. Another stumbled, clutching his chest. Her shots weren't as clean now, but they were enough to slow the tide, enough to give team the seconds they needed. Seconds were everything. But then her magazine clicked empty. For the first time in hours, her rifle fell silent. Her hand fumbled for another mag. She found one, slammed it home, chambered the round. But the tremor in her fingers told her what she didn't want to admit. She was almost done. Ammo low, blood lower. Still, she keyed her mic. "Phoenix 6, keep moving, you're almost there." The night split with new thunder. Rotor blades heavy, powerful. His head snapped up. Beyond the smoke, the northern sky glowed faint with navigation lights. The low roar of a Chinook rolled across the valley, escort gunships thundering in formation. The cavalry. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. "Extraction inbound," Davis shouted, his voice cracking with relief. "Copy," barked. "Move to the LZ now." They pushed harder, every man burning the last of his strength. Hauled Williams onto his back, staggering under the weight but refusing to falter. And Tours laid down, covering fire, buying each step. The Chinook flared, massive rotors throwing dust and debris into a hurricane. Its side doors opened, .50 cal gunners ripping the night apart, shredding enemy positions with thunderous fire. The ground shook with each burst. For the first time all night, the SEALs had a chance. Smiled weakly through the haze of pain. She had bought them long enough. The bird was down. The team was moving. Williams had a chance. Through her scope, she saw haul Williams into the helicopter, the crew chief shouting over the deafening rotor wash. Tours and piled in after, Davis dragging his comms kit aboard. Stood at the ramp, firing one last burst into the night before backing onto the bird. Her vision swam, but still she watched. Still she whispered into the radio, her voice fatting but firm. "Phoenix 6, I've got your 6, go." But's reply wasn't the one she expected. "Reaper, give me your position. We're coming for you." Her throat tightened. Tears she hadn't allowed in years burned hot behind her eyes. "No," she whispered. "Negative, you know the math. Williams needs that bird airborne now. If you wait for me, none of you make it out." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. His voice cracked just once, then hardened again. "I'm not leaving you here." She looked down at herself, the pool of blood spreading, the weakness creeping deeper with each heartbeat. She knew the truth. She wouldn't make it to the LZ. And even if she tried, dragging her broken body would only slow them, risk the wounded man's life. She smiled through the pain, through the tears. Would understand, get your people home. The Chinook's engines thundered, impatient. Enemy fire still licked at the landing zone. The crew chief shouted, "We have to lift now." Stood frozen at the ramp, torn between duty and guilt, between the brother he couldn't save and the sister who had just saved him. His fists clenched, jaw set, every instinct screaming to disobey. But then he looked at Williams, unconscious, pale, seconds from death. He looked at, soaked in blood, fighting with everything he had left to keep his patient alive. He looked at and Tors, beaten and bruised, still aiming outward, still refusing to quit. He made the choice no leader ever wanted. He stepped onto the bird. Reaper, his voice carried through the roar of engines, raw and unbreakable. This isn't over. I'm coming back for you. Closed her eyes. For the first time in years her heart eased. She believed him. The Chinook lifted, rotors tearing the valley apart with hurricane winds. Enemy fighters scattered under the fury of its guns. And its team disappeared into the night sky, carried towards survival. Slumped back into her hide, rifle heavy in her hand. Alone now, but not abandoned, not really. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, carried into the night. They're safe, that's enough. Darkness finally claimed her. 3 weeks later, light returned. A steady beep, the antiseptic smell of a hospital, her body tethered to machines, her arm immobilized in steel and pins. She blinked, struggling against the fog. You're awake. The voice pulled her fully back. He sat in a chair beside her bed, manila folder in his hands. He looked older, lined with exhaustion, but something in his eyes had changed. Not just guilt anymore, something steadier. Williams, her voice was cracked, raw. Leaned forward, alive, full recovery expected. She closed her eyes, relief flooding her chest. And Reeves, she asked. His jaw tightened. Confirmed dead, and his employers rolled up. Reeves kept records, names, payments, weapons, shipments. CIA's building a task force around it. They'll want your cooperation. Studied his face, searching for the lie, the evasion, but all she saw was truth. And she whispered. His voice softened, a weight lifting as he spoke. The truth came out. Your brother's Medal of Honor was approved last week for exposing the trafficking network, for saving lives. The right people finally know what he did. He didn't die forgotten. Her throat closed, tears blurring her vision. For the first time since that night 2 years ago, the ache in her chest felt lighter. Rose folder tucked under his arm. At the door he paused. There's a position waiting for you when you're ready. Don't waste your skills behind a desk. Not after this. She didn't answer right away. She only smiled faintly, whispering to herself as he left the room. Some debts can't be repaid, only carried forward. What did survival mean when the body healed slower than the mind? Lay in the hospital bed, the sterile white walls pressing in like a cage. Machines hummed at her side, monitors blinked their rhythm, but it was the silence between the sounds that gnawed at her. 3 weeks since the valley. 3 weeks since Reeves bled out in the dirt, since voice had promised, this isn't over. I'm coming back for you. And he had. She was alive because of him, because of his team, because they hadn't left her to the mountain's grave. But survival came with weight. The shattered shoulder, rebuilt with pins and plates, would never feel the same. The scar running across her cheek caught every time she smiled. Not that she had smiled much yet. And the ghost of quieter now but never gone lingered at the edge of every thought. The worst wound was trust. Returned every few days, always carrying updates, sometimes just sitting in silence across from her bed. His presence unsettled her, steady, unwavering, as if he'd decided he wouldn't leave this time. The CIA wants to debrief you, he said one morning, placing another manila folder on the table by her bed. Reeves's files confirmed what you suspected. Arms trafficking, chemical precursors, the works. His network had roots deeper than anyone realized. She stared at the folder, refusing to reach for it. And what do they want from me? Your expertise, replied simply. You've tracked these people for 2 years on your own. They want you inside a joint task force, military, agency, contractors, people who know the terrain. She snorted softly, wincing as the motion tugged at her shoulder. The same agency that lets death be buried under classified reports. The same military that promoted you while my family buried an empty casket. didn't flinch. He absorbed the words like stones thrown at armor. I won't defend the politics, but I will say this. Reeves's employers are still out there. His death didn't end it. If you want to stop them, this is the way. Her gaze lingered on him. His eyes were tired but steady, the eyes of a man who had lived too long with ghosts of his own. You still carry it, don't you? She asked quietly. The guilt. His jaw worked, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then, softly, every day. She looked away, blinking hard. Guilt was the one thing they shared. Rehabilitation was its own battlefield. The physical therapy room smelled of sweat and antiseptic, the clatter of weights and the hum of treadmills filling the space. Hated it. She hated the weakness in her arm, the way every lift burned, the way her body refused to obey. She had survived firefights, ambushes, nights alone in mountains. But here, lifting a rubber band tethered to a wall left her shaking. Her therapist, a patient woman named, pushed her hard. Again, control the motion, don't rush. I was a Marine sniper, muttered, her voice tight with frustration. I've carried 80 pounds of gear up a mountain, and now I can't even. You're not a Marine right now, interrupted firmly. You're a patient. You want back in the fight, earn it. One rep at a time. Gritted her teeth and obeyed, because weakness wasn't an option. And every time she wanted to quit, his voice whispered through memory, don't stop now, you've got more in you. Found her one afternoon, still in the therapy room, sweat dripping, her shoulder wrapped in elastic tape. She was working the resistance bands again, face clenched with determination. You push harder than half the operators I've served with, he said quietly, leaning in the doorway. She didn't look up. Flattery doesn't work on me, Commander. Not flattery, he replied. Observation. She finally met his eyes, breathing hard. Why are you here? Why keep coming back? He hesitated, then stepped closer. Because saved my life once, and you saved my men. I don't leave debts unpaid. She studied him, trying to read between the words. But part of her, against her will, believed him. Still, belief wasn't forgiveness. Her clearance came faster than she expected. The agency wasted no time. One morning, an operative in a suit appeared at her hospital room, sliding a signed packet onto her table. Joint Task Force authorization, the woman said briskly. You're officially attached to Operation Sentinel. Deployment in 6 weeks. Commander will brief you personally. The woman left as quickly as she came. Stared at the papers, the black ink of her name stark against the page. 6 weeks, back into the fight, back into the shadows where had died. Her chest tightened. She wanted to burn the papers, walk away, disappear into civilian life again. But when she closed her eyes, she saw the valley, the SEALs bleeding, his voice desperate over the radio, Williams pale and near death. And she knew, walking away wasn't an option anymore. 6 weeks later, she stood in a dim operations center, the glow of screens painting the room in cold light. Stood at the front, briefing the assembled team, an uneasy mix of SEALs, CIA operatives and contractors like her. Maps of Central Asia filled the screens, red lines tracing smuggling routes, supply caches, suspected safe houses. The name group was highlighted in bold, Reeves's former employers, now exposed as an international arms network. They're smart, said, his voice calm but hard. Reeves was one of many. They recruit ex-special forces, disillusioned contractors, anyone willing to sell their skills. They use shadows, corruption, plausible deniability. But thanks to the intel recovered, we have a lead. A shipment moving through in the next 72 hours. We intercept, we cripple their operation before it grows. The room hummed with quiet tension. Listened, arms crossed, every nerve alive with unease. She had been in rooms like this before. She remembered the same tone before Broken Arrow, before last flight. Briefings always sounded clean. The field was never clean. When the briefing ended, approached her. You'll be on Overwatch again. High ridge south of the target zone. We'll support from the opposite side. We'll move in for the intercept." She raised an eyebrow. "You're trusting me with your flank." His gaze didn't waver. "I trust you to take the shot when it counts." For a moment silence stretched between them, then she nodded once. That night, alone in her bunk, stared at the ceiling, sleep elusive. The room was dark, quiet, but her mind was. She thought of his laugh, of the way he had looked at her before boarding that helicopter for the last time. She thought of Reeves, bleeding out in the ravine, his words cutting deeper than his bullets ever had. She thought of his steady eyes, his relentless guilt, his promise at the ramp of the Chinook. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself not to falter when it mattered? Her hand brushed the scar on her cheek, the reminder of that night in the valley. Pain had become her constant companion, but so had clarity. His voice came again, soft, remembered. "Don't let anger choose for you. Let purpose guide you." She closed her eyes and whispered back into the darkness. "Then purpose it is." And with that she knew, whatever came next, she was going back into the fight. But this time not alone. How do you know when a mission is about to go wrong? Felt it before it began. A weight in her chest, a prickle at the back of her neck. She had learned long ago that instinct wasn't paranoia, it was survival. And tonight, her instinct screamed that something wasn't what it seemed. The convoy was late, 30 minutes past the expected time. The desert night stretched on, silent except for the whisper of wind through the rocks. Below her, the valley floor cut a dark scar through the landscape, moonlight casting faint silver on the dirt road that wound through it. She lay prone on the ridge, suit blending with sand and stone, her rifle snug against her shoulder. Every sense was focused outward, scanning shadows, listening for the smallest break in the silence. Across the valley was hidden on the opposite slope. His calm voice crackled once in her earpiece. "Nothing moving yet. You good?" She flexed her injured shoulder, wincing at the stiffness. Pain flared, but she forced her voice steady. "I'm good. Good enough to pull the trigger when it counted." His voice came next, calm, steady, the tone of a man who had lived through too many ambushes to trust clean intel. "Stay sharp. Convoy should shown 15 minutes ago. Davis confirmed signals again." "Still nothing," Davis replied from the team's concealed position near the road. "No chatter, it's quiet." "Too quiet," Torres muttered. Didn't respond. He didn't need to. They all felt it. Shifted her scope, scanning again. A lone dog trotted across the sand, ribs visible under its coat. A tumble of dust lifted briefly, then settled. Nothing else. Too empty. Her finger tapped against the trigger guard in thought. Convoys carrying weapons didn't move without chatter. They didn't run routes this silent, which meant one of two things. The shipment was delayed, or they weren't the hunters tonight. They were the bait. Then headlights. Far down the road, faint beams cut through the dark. A line of vehicles approached, 3 trucks, 2 armored SUVs. Slow, deliberate. Not the hurried movement of smugglers, but something more practiced. "Eyes on," whispered. Confirmed, 5 vehicles. Spacing looks military. Adjusted her scope, zooming in. Men rode in the back of the trucks, rifles cradled, scanning outward with trained discipline. Not locals, not amateurs. Her stomach tightened. She murmured, "These aren't smugglers." His voice came calm but hard. "Copy. Everyone hold position until we confirm cargo." The convoy slowed near the choke point where his team lay hidden. Engines idled. Dust settled. One of the SUV's doors opened and a man stepped out. His crosshairs locked on him automatically, tracing his features. Shaved head, sharp jaw, expensive coat that didn't belong in this desert. He didn't look like a courier. He looked like command. She whispered into the comms. "Target looks high value. Permission to engage." Silence was watching too, weighing it. Then his voice. "Negative, we need intel first. Hold fire." Her jaw clenched. She could take him now. One shot, one squeeze, and the head of the snake would be gone. Every instinct screamed to act. But she obeyed, she held. The man gestured and the truck beds were uncovered, adjusted her scope, eyes narrowing. Crates stacked neatly, stenciled markings visible even through the magnification. Not food, not fuel, weapons. She read the markings, her blood running cold. These aren't rifles, they're chemical precursors, enough to make a lot of people very dead. His voice was low, grim. Copy, confirmed contraband. You're green on targets when it goes loud. Her heart steadied. The waiting was over. But before she could fire, before men could move, a second set of headlights flared to life, this time from the ridge behind her. Engines multiple. Froze, we've got company, North Ridge, fast movers. Cursed in her ear, same here, 2 technicals coming in hard. Didn't hesitate. They knew we'd be here. Everyone contact imminent, take the ridges, we'll handle the road. The night exploded. Gunfire erupted as the first technical crested the ridge behind, a mounted machine gun raking the rocks where she lay. She rolled, dirt spraying around her, bullets tearing into stone. Her rifle came up, crosshairs found the gunner. She fired. The man dropped, tumbling off the mounted weapon, his body bouncing into the dust. But the vehicle kept coming. Another burst chewed into the ridge, one round grazing her thigh. She bit back a cry, chambered another round, and dropped the driver through the windshield. The truck careened, flipped, and crashed into the rocks. Flames erupted, lighting the night in violent orange. Her chest heaved. One down, too many left. On the valley floor, chaos reigned. His team opened fire as the convoy erupted into violence. Fighters spilled from the trucks, trained and disciplined, returning fire with brutal efficiency. The night became a storm of muzzle flashes, dust, and shouted commands. Contact front multiple, Tours bellowed. Davis jammed their comms, shouted. I'm trying, signals are bouncing, encrypted. Davis fired back, frantically working his equipment even as bullets cut the air. Williams, still weak but armed, fired from behind cover, his face pale but determined. Stayed glued to him, refusing to let him fall again. Moved like a force of nature, firing, signaling, dragging his men into coordinated survival. But even he could see it. The enemy was prepared. Too prepared. This wasn't an interception. It was another trap. Fought to stabilize her breathing, scope finding targets as fast as she could. Another technical roared over the ridge, machine gun spitting fire. She exhaled, squeezed, dropped the gunner before he could zero in on men. Second vehicle disabled, she transmitted, voice hoarse. Confirmed from across the valley. Copy, taking heat here too, holding as long as I can. But even through the comms could hear it, the strain in his voice, the numbers pressing down. Her eyes scanned the ridge again, heart slamming, and then she saw him. Not Reeves. Reeves was dead, but another sniper. The figure crouched behind cover on the opposite slope, scope trained not on, but on her. Her breath caught. She ducked an instant before the shot cracked, a bullet sparking off the rock where her head had been. She hissed, rolling deeper into cover, "We've got another sniper in play. He's hunting me. Can you handle it?" His voice carried urgency but no doubt. Chambered around, blood running down her thigh, pain screaming through her body. She steadied her breathing, scanning, searching for the glint of glass, the faint shadow of movement. "Yes," she whispered almost to herself, "I can handle it." The firefight roared on. Its men were pinned, the convoy's fighters pressing, the ridges alive with hostile fire. Every second stretched thin, every shot mattered. And in the chaos felt it again, that razor edge between vengeance and duty. She could take reckless shots, burn through her ammo in rage and fall with nothing gained. Or she could steady herself, breathe, and do what would have done. Protect the living. Her scope found the enemy sniper again, just a sliver of shadow between rocks. She exhaled, squeezed, and the figure jerked backward, weapon tumbling from his grip. She keyed her mic, voice cold, controlled. Sniper neutralized, push now. Didn't hesitate, copy, all units advance. The SEALs surged through the storm, using every second her shot had bought. Crates exploded, trucks burned, men fell. The night was chaos, fire, and fury. But through it all's rifle kept speaking, each shot a vow, each breath a promise. She would not let become another broken arrow. Not tonight. When does a mission stop being about orders and start being about truth? The valley was burning. Flames licked skyward from the overturned trucks, black smoke smothering the stars. Gunfire echoed off the ridges, bouncing in endless ricochets. The air reeked of cordite, fuel, and blood. Lay prone on her ridge, chest heaving, every shot of her rifle ringing through her battered body. She had dropped 2 technicals, a sniper, and half a dozen fighters, but there were always more. Shadows moved in the firelight, disciplined, methodical, not panicked insurgents, soldiers, trained, equipped, paid. Below's team fought in a ring of fire. His rifle cracked from cover, buying seconds at a time. Tors darted between positions, laying suppressive bursts. Davis hunched over his comms kit, still trying to cut through the static. Crouched low over Williams, dragging him when the team shifted, shielding him with his own body. Was everywhere, firing, signaling, pulling his men through the impossible. But even he knew the math. They were outnumbered, outflanked, out of time. His radio crackled, Davis's voice breaking through the chaos. "Sir, I've got something, encrypted channel. Someone's broadcasting coordinates." His reply came sharp. "Coordinates to who?" Davis hesitated, fingers flying over his gear. "Not enemy frequencies. Higher band, secure, sir, it's friendly. Coalition signatures." Friendly, blood ran cold. She'd heard that word twisted before. "Put it on speaker," she demanded, eyes still locked on her scope. Static bled through, then a clipped professional voice. "This is control. Package compromised. Contain and eliminate. Repeat, eliminate. Do not allow." For a second the battlefield noise seemed to vanish. Froze, Tors swore, even paused between shots. His pulse thundered in her ears. "They're not here to stop the smugglers," she whispered. "They're here for you." Betrayal carried a different weight in combat. Bullets you expected, you could survive. Bullets from the people you trusted, those cut deeper. His face hardened in the firelight, eyes narrowing. "Say that again." Davis's voice was hoarse. "Sir, it's authenticated, our own command, they the trap." His growl came bitter through the comms. "Figures, this whole op stank from the start." His chest tightened. She had felt it too, the silence, the setup, the too-perfect convoy. Reeves's words echoed, venomous and true in ways she hadn't wanted to believe. If was guilty, why was he promoted? Because someone needed a scapegoat. Someone above wanted it buried. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just an ambush. This was sanctioned. And she had walked right into it again. His voice snapped back into command mode. "We're not dying here for someone else's cover story. Tors shift fire to the southern slope. We're punching through. Davis, jam every frequency you can. We'll need you clearing the path." His voice cut through her haze, grounding her. She steadied her rifle, swept the valley, and nodded to no one. "Copy. Targets in sight." She fired. Another fighter dropped. His rifle sang in echo. Together they carved seconds of breathing room, seconds seized. "Move." The SEALs surged, dragging Williams, bullets snapping at their heels, dust exploding under their boots. His face was grim, determined. Tors fired wildly, covering their sprint. Davis cursed at his gear, antenna sparking as he overloaded frequencies. Ran at the front, every stride carrying the weight of men who followed him not because they had to, but because he refused to leave them. Rolled to a new position, ignoring the fire tearing through her thigh and shoulder. Her scope swept, found an enemy closing on. She exhaled, fired. The man fell, never even saw the bullet that had saved him. Through her comms, his voice carried fierce, ragged gratitude. "Reaper, keep talking to me. Don't stop now." She wanted to answer, but words caught in her throat. She wasn't sure who she was fighting for anymore, herself, or the man whose voice pulled her back from the edge every time she wanted to close her eyes. The convoy commander, the man with the shaved head and expensive coat, watched from behind cover, shouting orders in a language half recognized. He wasn't panicking. He was orchestrating. His fighters weren't here to defend crates. They were here to ensure none of the Americans left alive. Her crosshairs found him. One squeeze and he'd be gone. Her finger brushed the trigger. But something inside her froze. Reeves's words again. You think sentiment wins wars. No, sentiment gets you killed. She gritted her teeth. Reeves was dead. His poison wasn't, but maybe was right. Sometimes it wasn't about revenge. Sometimes it was about purpose. She shifted her aim, fired instead at the man flanking. Clean hit. Saved a brother instead of feeding her rage. She swallowed hard, whispering to herself, not revenge, not anymore. Sir, Davis shouted, I've got to break unsecured frequency, not military, contractor band. His heart jolted. Contractor. She recognized the cadence instantly, the same tone she had heard in Reeves's employers before. Patchett ordered. The voice spilled through, casual, businesslike. Confirm status. Eliminates unit. Confirm if possible. Payment triples if recovered alive. Alive, her stomach turned. They didn't just want her dead. They wanted her captured, used, maybe broken the way had been broken. Her breath came sharp. They're hunting me too. His voice snapped like a whip. Not tonight, they're not. Keep their heads down. We're moving to the extraction ridge. The battle became a blur. Fire and shadows, screams and commands, bullets and blood. Fired until her rifle smoked, until every shot rattled her battered frame. Mirrored her from across the valley, their unseen duet cutting holes in the enemy's net. But still the tide pressed closer. More fighters, more fire, endless. Her magazine clicked dry again. She slammed another in with trembling hands, whispering his name under her breath like a prayer. Below and his men reached the base of the southern ridge. The extraction beacon blinked faintly in the dark. Davis had forced it through the jamming, a miracle born of desperation. A green flare arced into the sky. Signal. His voice broke through, rough with exhaustion but steady. Reaper, we're almost there. Hold them just a little longer. She adjusted her scope, blood running down her arm. Her voice came back quiet but firm. Copy. You've got my last mag, make it count. For a moment, time slowed. She watched drag Williams over the rocks, covering them with pistol fire when his rifle ran dry. Torres stumbled but pushed forward, blood running from a graze on his leg. Moved with methodical precision, each shot deliberate, even as his ammo dwindled. They were battered, broken, bleeding, but not beat. And she realized something she hadn't wanted to admit until now. She trusted them. Not because they were perfect, not because death had been clean of shadows, but because in the middle of betrayal, fire, and lies, these men still fought for each other, still refused to leave anyone behind. Including her. The roar of rotor blades filled the valley again. Not the heavy thrum of a Chinook this time, but the sharper growl of. Two of them, sweeping in low, guns blazing, rockets slamming into enemy positions. Dust and fire exploded in every direction. The enemy line shattered. Extraction inbound, Davis shouted. His voice broke through the chaos. Reaper, we've got a bird on deck in 90 seconds. Give me your coordinates. She hesitated. Her scope showed the cutting through the battlefield, their lights flashing like salvation. The SEALs running, dragging Williams, climbing towards survival. She could call it in, could finally let herself be carried out instead of left behind. But her eyes flicked back to the convoy commander, still alive, still barking orders, retreating into the shadows with a small escort. She exhaled slowly. This wasn't over. Her voice came through the comms, steady but distant. Phoenix 6, take the bird, get your people out, I'll cover. His reply was immediate, fierce. Negative, you're coming with us. She closed her eyes, whispering the words like a vow. Not yet. And then she cut the channel. Her scope locked back on the convoy commander. This wasn't vengeance anymore. This was purpose. One squeeze, one shot. And the story wasn't over. What happens when the battle ends, but the silence does? Lay still in the dust of her rifle pressed against her chest, the smoke of burning trucks curling into the night sky. The roar of faded into distance, carrying steam out of the valley. For the second time in her life, she had chosen to remain behind. But this time it wasn't grief or rage that anchored her. It was purpose. Her crosshairs had followed the convoy commander as he retreated with his escort. Too far for a clean shot, too close to let go. She had trailed them until the darkness swallowed them whole, and by then her body had given out. Her shoulder screamed, her thigh burned, her blood soaked into the sand. When she finally lost consciousness, she wasn't afraid. She woke in another hospital bed, not military this time, local. Rough walls, dim light, the faint smell of dust and antiseptic. A nurse with weathered hands pressed water to her lips and a doctor stitched her wounds in silence. They asked no questions. She gave no answers. 2 days later, she slipped out under her own power. Pain was constant, but she moved anyway, because the fight wasn't finished. Found her weeks later in Kabul. He stepped into the quietly, but she felt him before she saw him. He always carried that gravity, like a storm barely contained. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, studying her. "You cut comms," he said flatly. She sat at a battered table, cleaning her rifle with slow, deliberate motions. She didn't look up. "I told you I'd cover. You almost died." She smirked faintly. "Almost isn't dead." Silence stretched, then crossed the room, dropping a file on the table. She glanced at it but didn't reach. "What's this?" "The truth," he said. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Photos, reports, debrief transcripts, Reeves's recovered files. Ant's name. Her breath caught. For years she had lived with fragments, rumors, silence, the official line that he'd been in the wrong place, wrong time. But here in black ink was the reality. Had uncovered the trafficking network months before anyone admitted it existed. He'd filed reports, flagged irregularities, tried to force action. The system buried him, smothered his words under classification. The night of his death, he hadn't been careless. He hadn't been collateral, he had been targeted, his helicopter sabotaged, his warnings silenced. Her throat closed as tears blurred her vision. "He tried to protect you," said quietly. "That's why he didn't tell you everything. He thought if the wrong people knew you had the intel, you'd be next." Pressed her hand against her mouth, fighting the sob that clawed free anyway. For so long she had carried anger at, hatred for a man she believed had abandoned her brother. But the truth was, the betrayal had come from above, from people had trusted. She looked at, her voice breaking. "All this time and you let me hate you." He nodded once, eyes steady. "Better me than." The weight of it crushed her chest. She closed her eyes, whispering into her hands. His voice came softer. "The group isn't done. Reeves was one head of the snake. The commander you saw in, his name is X, now a mercenary kingpin. He's running operations across 6 borders, and he knows your face now." Her eyes opened, wet but burning. "So he'll come for me." Shook his head. "He'll come for all of us, unless we go first." He leaned closer, voice low, steady. "I need you, not because of what you lost, because of what you've survived. Because you see things the rest of us can't afford to look at. You make us better. You make me better." For a long time she said nothing. Her hands tightened on the rifle she'd been cleaning, her brother's voice echoing through memory. "Don't stop now. You've got more in you." When she finally spoke, it was quiet but unshakable. "Then we finish it." Training began again. Different this time. Not for war, but for precision, for purpose. Pushed her broken shoulder through every drill, every mile, every repetition. Rejoined her on the range, shaking his head with a grin as she split targets cleaner than ever. Tors clapped her on the back after runs, muttering, "Didn't think ghosts could keep pace, but here we are." Even Davis, quiet and pale after, began to trust her presence. And he never pushed. He only watched. Watched her fight her pain. Watched her bury her doubts. Watched her become something more than a woman chasing her brother's shadow. Their first mission against came months later. Somewhere in the frozen borderlands, where steel containers full of weapons lay buried under snow. The firefight was brutal. Precision mattered more than numbers. Took her ridge again, breath steaming in the cold, her scope steady despite the wind. She watched team breach, saw men scatter, saw chaos unravel. And when the moment came, when himself emerged, barking orders, she exhaled and pulled the trigger. The round cracked through the icy air, striking his shoulder. Not a kill, not clean, but enough to break his control, enough to buy the seconds he needed. The mission wasn't over, wasn't finished, but for the first time didn't feel like she was chasing death. She felt like she was building something would have been proud of. Later, after the mission, she sat alone by the fire, snow melting off her boots, rifle resting across her knees. Approached quietly, settling beside her without a word. They sat in silence, the crackle of fire filling the space where ghosts once howled. Finally spoke, "You did good." She glanced at him, then back at the flames. "Good doesn't bring him back." "No," said softly, "but it honors him." Her eyes burned. She nodded once, whispering into the fire, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." Didn't reply, he didn't need to. And for the first time since death, felt the weight on her chest lift, not gone, never gone, but lighter, bearable. Because grief wasn't her only companion anymore, purpose was. And purpose could carry her forward.